Good evening, everyone. I'm Aspen Institute President and CEO Dan Porterfield. And on behalf of the entire Institute, I would like to thank you all for joining us virtually this evening. The Socrates Program has a great evening planned, including recognition of 2020 Socrates Honoree, our trustee, Clare Muñana, and a conversation between Aspen Digital Executive Director Vivian Schiller and New York Times media columnist Ben Smith. While we all wish the circumstances were different and that we could gather up in Aspen together, we're grateful that we can come together virtually to celebrate the critically important work of the Socrates Program. This event supports the Socrates Program and greatly contributes to our ability to convene the highest caliber participants on the most important topics of the day by providing scholarships to individuals from all sectors and backgrounds. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize and thank our donors for their support of the Socrates Program. Please join me in thanking Socrates co-founders and dinner co-chairs, Laura and Gary Lauder, dinner co-chairs, Terri Broussard Williams and Lemuel Williams, Judy and Leonard Lauder, the John P. and Ann Welsh McNulty Foundation, the Crown family, and Clare Muñana. Once again, thank you for joining us from afar tonight. Community is needed now more than ever, and we're so grateful to have you as part of the Aspen Institute community. Thank you, and have a great night.
Welcome to our virtual Socrates dinner. We're so appreciative of your attention, your generosity, and enthusiasm for all things Socrates at the Aspen Institute. We hope you're all safe and healthy wherever you are.
Gary and I started this program about 24 years ago, when we were about 12. And now over 7,000 young leaders from all over the world have attended. We're only able to attract the best and the brightest, regardless of their ability to pay, thanks to your generosity in making scholarships available through this dinner. And this year, we didn't even give you dinner.
My passion for the Aspen Institute originated in 1980 when I was 18, and I attended a teen seminar where we debated, among other things, whether it was okay that 2 of 3 shipwrecked survivors in a lifeboat ate the third one. The 19th century case was called Regina versus Dudley and Stevens. The Aspen Institute seminar format had a profound effect on me. So in 1992, a few months after I met Laura, one of my tests for whether she was the right one for me was whether she appreciated the Aspen Institute by attending the seminar named Democracy in the Digital Age. Not only did she love it, but to make a long story short, Laura is now an Aspen Institute trustee.
Gary and I fell in love with each other and with Aspen 28 years ago. And now our kids are involved here too. We created the Teen Socrates Program, which they loved, and now they are regulars in the regular Aspen Institute Socrates Program, showing us up in seminar rooms every summer. Eliana and Josh, we wish you were here with us.
None of this would have been possible without the extraordinary leadership of the Socrates Executive Directors over the years. Kitty Boone was our first, and we honored her last year at this dinner. After Kitty created the Ideas Festival, we were fortunate to hire Melissa Ingber, who took us to new heights for 7 years. Now, Cordell Carter is our fearless leader and exceptional visionary for Socrates for the past 3 years. He is ably accompanied by a great team of Cynthia, Carly, Summer, and Gabriella. Thanks to each of you for your fabulous hard work in bringing our entire program online this year. We also thank Aspen Institute EVP Elliot Gerson, whose steadfast support over the past 16 years has enabled Socrates to grow and to thrive.
Now it's my turn to introduce our amazing honoree this year, the incredible Clare Muñana. Clare is a dear friend and a great supporter of the Socrates Program. Clare has enabled a wide variety of scholars to participate in Socrates from all over the world, for which we are deeply grateful. And as chair of the Aspen Institute's International Committee, Clare has helped bring Socrates to many of our international partners, 11 in all. So when you hear about Socrates Mexico, or Socrates Japan, or Socrates Spain, or Socrates New Zealand, and you're ready to jump on a plane and you want to go too, you can thank Clare for whispering in the ear of the executive directors of those programs. Thanks so much for that. Clare is a dear, dear friend and a force of nature. yet in such a humble and unintimidating way. She talks to heads of state the same way she chats with close friends, warm and unassuming. Clare solves the world's problems through her fantastic philanthropy and through her consulting firm. Everything from criminal justice reform to education for women and girls in her home city of Chicago. You know, I think that Clare has 3 clones because somehow, simultaneously, she could be attending an Aspen Institute board meeting in India with Aspen India. And then she's also found receiving an MBA, receiving an award from her alma mater, the MBA program at Northwestern. Or she could be working with Chicago city leaders to shape a cultural arts governance program across the city. Yep, she doesn't sleep. I admire you, Clare, and we adore you. You inspire all of us to think big and give credit to everyone else. Bravo. You're a true friend of ours and of Socrates. Congratulations, Clare.
Greetings and welcome. Who knew this would be an invitation to a mass ball? Thank you very much for the honor of being singled out this year for the celebration of the work of Socrates and its global role at the Institute. I would like to thank the Institute and my fellow trustees, especially those deeply involved in the Socrates Program and our International Committee. Thank you, Laura and Gary, for creating, leading, and sustaining Socrates for the past 24 years, and to Terri and Lemuel for hosting this year's unique celebration. I wish to express my gratitude to Dan Porterfield for your leadership and continuing interest in the Institute's international reach and the closer ties we can create. And to Cordell Carter and your team for all you do to connect with our partners around the world. I would like to express special gratitude to Leonard Lauder, who has been a long-standing, generous, wise mentor and supporter. Allow me also to acknowledge the great team which nurtures our international work, Elliot Gerson, Jonathan Price, and Callie O'Byrne. I gratefully accept this recognition as a part of the institutional international Aspen family, which I fondly refer to as our movable feast of ideas, dialogue, and debate, including the convivial cheer, fun, and tasting menus experienced across the world together. For those of you who may not know them all, our 11 international partners are Central Europe, based in Prague, France, Germany, Japan, India, Italy, Mexico, New Zealand, Romania, Spain, and Ukraine. And we have growing initiatives in the UK and Colombia. Together, they sponsored over 400 activities this year in multiple languages and across all time zones. I am convinced that in our now digital meetings, some partners join us in pajamas, while others sip a morning cappuccino or an after-dinner digestive. While each partner faces distinct challenges, collectively we share the Aspen mission to pursue a free, just, and equitable world, a charge which is particularly daunting and challenging at the moment. Our partners are on the front lines of their societies, often under duress, sparking intellectual inquiry and responding to the need for civil discourse, by leveraging a deep knowledge of moderated, open dialogue between diverse leaders on critical issues of the day. As it does in the US, Socrates Global creates the forum in which discussion and understanding can flourish. Issues range from global climate to cybersecurity, and now to the political, economic, and social effects of the pandemic and institutional racism. Tough topics, hard thinking. These young leaders undertake the issues with energy, intelligence, and an open-mindedness which is inspiring. The Socrates and partner teams work to deepen our mutual ties. The Kobayashi Scholarship, made possible with Leonard Lauder, enables young Japanese leaders to participate in Socrates in Japan and abroad. In the UK, with great support from Laura and Gary, Socrates has generated excitement and engagement with the new Aspen. And with our Aspen team exchanges, recently we have been privileged to have Jose Araiza, Director of Aspen España, moderate seminars in Colombia and the US. These examples remind us of the rich atmosphere and dynamic produced when differing views, cultures, and perspectives are brought together. As a key to our global programming, Socrates seminars further the important work of our partners in impacting their communities and societies and allow the Aspen idea to thrive. My heartfelt appreciation goes out to all our partners for their steadfast determination and courage, and to you and all the supporters of this enterprise. I appreciate this honor for the small part I play in our collective global pursuit of the good society. I look forward to continuing the adventure with you. Thank you.
Clare Muñana, what a name, what a personality, and what a mission you stand for, value-based leadership around the world. Clare is well known for her many achievements, but especially with Aspen. We owe you so much for your leadership and dedication for our Aspen family and our global network. With your leadership, we will weather the storm and reach new shores. And because you are a real citizen of the world, I can say with great pride to you, Clare, du bist ein Berliner. Thank you, we love you all, and greetings from all of us here in Berlin.
Chère Claire, j'ai été très heureux d'être associé par l'équipe d'Aspen US et du Socrates Program à cet hommage qui t'est rendu. C'est une façon pour moi de te marquer ma reconnaissance puisque tu m'as accueilli au sein du réseau international d'Aspen lorsque j'ai pris la présidence d'Aspen France. Nous avons déjà beaucoup travaillé ensemble, nous avons beaucoup de souvenirs communs. Versailles fut l'un de ces grands moments, mais il y en a eu beaucoup d'autres aux États-Unis, dans d'autres pays où Aspen est représenté. Tu nous unis, toujours avec le sourire, toujours avec la bienveillance, toujours avec cette intention de développer encore plus le rayonnement d'Aspen dans le monde et nous sommes très heureux de travailler à tes côtés. C'est pour cette raison que je participe de tout cœur, à distance, à cette reconnaissance traduite aujourd'hui par tous les membres d'Aspen à ton égard et j'espère que nous nous retrouverons très vite pour la célébrer. Merci beaucoup et à bientôt.
Hi, I'm Angelo Petroni from Aspen Institute Italia. Clare, tu hai il nome di una santa molto importante, Santa Chiara, che è la santa più importante della mia regione. Aspen Italia ed io personalmente ti siamo molto grati per tutto quello che hai fatto e stai facendo per il network degli Aspen nel mondo. Tu sei una persona straordinaria per due ragioni. La prima è perché hai grandi capacità di organizzazione. La seconda perché sei una grande psicologa. Tu capisci perfettamente ogni persona, capisci ogni situazione, capisci ogni Aspen nel mondo, cosa deve fare, cosa può fare e perché anche non ha fatto quello che avrebbe dovuto fare. Grazie, grazie, grazie.
I am Ken Ito of Aspen, Japan. Hi Claire, congratulations on receiving the award to be honored as the chairwoman of the Aspen International Committee. You have been leading the committee of 12 Aspen countries for the last several years. You always encourage us with prudent ideas and convincing tone of your cheerful voice. Your leadership has been certainly the core of the international Aspen community to be united. Thank you very much, Claire. Arigato, Claire. Go Chicago Cubs, the MLB champions. Go Claire, our Aspen International champion.
Congratulations, Claire. What a pleasure it is to be part of this wonderful celebration in your honor. We wish we could have been there with you in person, but circumstances just don't allow for us to be with you at this time. We even missed you in India. We were so looking forward to receiving you here for the International Committee meeting this year, but hope we'll get to see you and to receive you in India. It's been just so wonderful to have you as the chair of the International Committee. You've brought us all so close together. We've traveled to countries which I had never expected to do in my entire life. So thank you for these wonderful experiences, for these wonderful friendships, and thank you for everything that you do for all of us around the world. Wishing you the best, Claire.
Claire, în numele meu și al întregii familii Aspen Institute România, vreau să te felicităm pentru acest premiu. Nu este o persoană mai potrivită decât tine pentru a primi The Socrates Benefit Award în acest an. reprezinți ca nimeni altcineva valorile noastre, valorile familiei Aspen la nivel internațional. Ești inima, locomotiva și creierul rețelei internaționale Aspen care continuă să se extindă. Suntem foarte mândri de tine. De aici, de la sediul NATO din Bruxelles și în numele întregii familii Aspen România, îți transmitem cele mai bune gânduri, felicitări, keep up the good work și sperăm ca în timpul cel mai rapid cu putință să putem să ne întâlnim în persoană. We love you, we miss you, and we hug you.
It's wonderful to join this celebration from Madrid, Spain. Thank you, Claire, for everything you do for the international partners. Thank you for your wonderful support of Aspen España. We cannot thank you enough.
Querida Claire, queremos agradecerte especialmente tu unión personal al patronato de Aspen Institute España. Eres un ejemplo de liderazgo y inspiración para el resto de nuestros patronos.
Claire, it's been a real honor to meet you and a true inspiration. You are a true inspiration to work with, especially at the IC meetings and in Spain. We look forward to seeing you again.
Hola Claire, bueno, como sabes, creemos que la idea de Aspen es más importante que nunca, así que te esperamos en Madrid muy pronto para celebrar juntos la salida de esta crisis. Un abrazo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jo, milá Claire, jsem strašně rád, že ti mohu pogratulovat jménem všech nás z Aspenu, ze střední Evropy k tomuto ocenění. To, co ty pro nás děláš a to, co si pro nás vždycky dělá, je úplně fantastické. Od chvíli, kdy jsme se stali součástí aspenské rodiny, nebo family, jak se tomu říká, tak jsi s náma spolupracovala a byla si vlastně jedním z našich nejdůležitějších spojenců, abych to tak řekl, mezi Aspenem, Spojené státy, Aspenem Střední Evropa a celou tou aspenskou rodinou. Takže ještě jednou co nejupřímnější gratulace, všechno nejlepší a my všichni v Praze, my všichni ve Střední Evropě se těšíme na další spolupráci. Měj se krásně, Ivan.
Hi Claire, thank you for all your valuable support to Aspen Institute Mexico. It's been so important to us. Te consideramos parte de nuestra familia.
Querida Claire, tenemos un mensaje desde México muy cariñoso para ti. Siempre has sido una mujer que ha estado muy atenta a los asuntos que realizamos en este país y sé por los colegas que también a nivel internacional has tenido un manejo espléndido de lo que son las relaciones internacionales de Aspen. Nos sentimos muy honrados y muy contentos de tener este vínculo contigo. Sabemos del enorme trabajo que realizas para la proyección mundial de nuestro querido Instituto Aspen y te deseo lo mejor, además de felicitarte por el gran trabajo que has realizado en todos estos años. Un abrazo muy fuerte para ti, te queremos mucho, cuídate y seguimos en contacto, Claire.
Dear Claire, from Aspen Institute Kiev to you, our dear thanks, our congratulations. You were with us from the very beginning, you're with us every day. We feel your support, your inspiration, and your kindness to each and every one of our team. Congratulations, couldn't be more deserved. Thank you.
Дорога Клер, щиро вітаємо, що ви з нами постійно, радіємо можливостям розділяти з вами те, як реалізовує свою місію Aspen Інститут. Дякуємо за всю підтримку і радіємо сьогодні всі разом з вами. Вітаємо!
Congratulations, Claire, on all that you've done for the Aspen Institute International Network. This evening is for you. Aspen New Zealand wishes you all the best, and we hope you get to come back here soon. Ngā mihi.
Thank you again for celebrating 24 years of the Socrates Program with us. My name is Cordell Carter, and I'm the Executive Director of the Aspen Institute Socrates Program. It is indeed my honor to introduce a dear colleague in Vivian Schiller and a new colleague in Ben Smith to a dinner conversation as per our tradition. Vivian leads Aspen Digital, but prior to that, she has over 30 years as an executive with some of the most decorated media and technology platforms. Ben Smith is the media columnist for the New York Times. I don't know about you all, but there seems to be a lot to talk about with respect to media these days. Please join me in welcoming Vivian and Ben to the floor.
When Ben Smith was announced as the new media columnist for the New York Times earlier this year, it was the shot heard round the media world. Ben practices the opposite of what is often called access journalism. That's the kind conducted by reporters who cozy up to sources because they need them and want to keep getting invited to the right parties. But for his entire career, Ben has defied conventional wisdom and slaughtered many sacred cows. He did it again this week, more on that soon. Based on his writings just these last few months, I suspect over time, Ben will have more and more admirers, but possibly fewer and fewer friends. Ben came to the New York Times after 8 years as founding editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed News. Before that, he covered politics for Politico, the New York Daily News, the New York Observer, and the New York Sun. As New York Times media columnist, he is a very worthy successor to the legendary David Carr, who died more than 5 years ago. I think I speak not just for myself when I say that for the first time since Carr was writing the column, I've started hitting refresh on nytimes.com on Sunday nights, waiting to see what he has to say. Of course, I don't usually have to hit refresh because the second one of Ben's columns hits, my Twitter feed explodes. Ben is a reporter, not a pontificator. He's broken countless stories and made some controversial calls. In fact, in his very first column for the New York Times, he went after the New York Times, asserting their success is not good for journalism overall, although I have to say it was a bit of a compliment to the New York Times as well, so that was very clever, Ben. So we are now going to talk a little bit about, I want to go back and talk a little bit about Ben's history, and then we're quickly going to come up to date and talk about what's happening in media today, because it is a lot. So Ben, thank you for being here.
Thank you for that complicated introduction. I don't have that many friends to begin with, so I don't know where I can wind up with.
Well, you are a complicated guy, which is what makes you so interesting. So, okay, let's go back, not all the way back, but let's go back to BuzzFeed. So when you left Politico to head news for BuzzFeed, BuzzFeed was a bit of a punchline. And there were a lot of raised eyebrows when you took that move, because it was not a serious place. And yet you made BuzzFeed into a very, very serious news outlet, changed its reputation. You were a 2-time Pulitzer finalist. At the time, BuzzFeed was considered pretty radical. And now, after so many years, how many years has it been? When did you start at BuzzFeed again?
Been 8 years there.
Yeah, 8 years. So, and have only just left. But now BuzzFeed News feels as conventional in many ways as many mainstream news publications. So my question is, did BuzzFeed change, or did the rest of media change around BuzzFeed?
Well, you know, I mean, when BuzzFeed hired me, it wasn't like it had an unjust reputation for being silly. It was a silly website that did the really fun pop culture stuff, and that was all, and wanted to get into news because Jonah Peretti, the founder, had sort of realized that, you know, that a site rooted in social media would, like social media, start with fun, silly stuff, but news was increasingly becoming a big part of social media, and he needed to be there. You know, and the thing with this business, with the news business, it's like incredibly like small c conservative. There was outrage when they put color photos on the front page of the New York Times. There was outrage when they launched an auto section. There was, you know, journalists are like, and particularly like young journalists who are just out of journalism school are like, they're like young priests. Like they really think the ritual should be celebrated in Latin. And because like they just learned Latin. And so there's always a lot of backlash to new stuff. And sometimes, you know, sometimes the new stuff is really dumb and deserves backlash. But I think the other thing about this business is if you break news, people have to deal with you, even if they think you're ridiculous and terrible. And so we definitely tried to do a lot of that at BuzzFeed. And I think that was sort of I mean, there's no real secret. You break news and people have to deal with you.
Yeah. But do you think, I mean, the interesting thing is BuzzFeed was still, you make a good point about, you know, traditional news being sort of the high priesthood, and people come in, young people come in, and they don't necessarily, although I think this may be changing, we'll talk about this later, young people come in and don't necessarily change the culture of the newsroom, they conform to the existing culture of the newsroom that's been around for a long time.
I would say that is changing a bit.
Yeah, it definitely is changing, but it doesn't, you know, BuzzFeed certainly is not considered radical anymore. And I would submit that, you know, the traditional stalwarts, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the CNNs, et cetera, have become more BuzzFeed-like in the way that they approach coverage?
I think, the core insight that Geoana had and that we sort of worked on at BuzzFeed was that social media was going to be really important. And that you could sort of build a news organization wrapped around social media. And obviously that's, has had its ups and downs and the pendulum swings and having a big subscription operation is really important too. But I think that if in 2012, people, top editors would basically say this social media stuff is silly garbage and it's going to go away. Nobody thinks that now and everybody has to reckon with it. And I think a lot of what we did and, figuring out how do you do journalism in a kind of native, transparent way on these platforms is now something everybody does.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it certainly, it is coming from traditional news organizations myself. It feels like an incredible sea change. You had a great line talking about what things are how the culture in newsrooms are changing now. You had a great line in a recent column that happy newsrooms are all alike, but every unhappy newsroom is unhappy in its own way. Thank you very much, Tolstoy. And it does strike me that is.
I got some shit for that. So.
What, people didn't know that you ripped off Tolstoy?
Like, come on,
Cliche. Nah, but it's true, I think. So you've written a lot, and there's a lot going on in terms of this kind of unhappiness in newsrooms. In fact, you've joined the New York Times at what appears to be a time of turmoil. There's a lot of internal division, particularly in the opinion section. James Bennett, who was running opinion, who is widely admired and well-known among people that come to Aspen events, stepped down in part because the staff rose up. Now, I should point out that, and this is just part of what makes the New York Times very complicated, so I'm just sort of explaining, not to you, Ben, but to others. You are a columnist and you express your opinion, but you're not part of the opinion section. It can get confusing.
Yeah, I don't understand why anybody finds that confusing. It seems very straightforward to me.
Really? I don't know.
No, it's totally opaque. I think a lot of what...
Oh, I was going to say.
I'm going to butcher the phrase, but there's sort of an idea in the tech business that there's a kind of classic mistake that software developers make where you kind of, the thing that you create is basically an expression of your org chart rather than of the user experience, right? And so you have 17 boxes on the screen because you have 17 teams at your company. And I think places making the transition from print to digital media have some of that. I think the Times has some of that. No normal person could possibly be expected to understand what is new, the line between news and opinion, because both sides have migrated toward the sort of thing people want to consume on the internet, which is, reporting with a point of view and with an argument.
My favorite party trick is to introduce people to the concept of ragged right, which people that have been reading the New York Times in print all their lives have never noticed that some articles are justified right, literally justified in the column. You go across the whole column, and some are ragged right. And that is an indication of what is opinion or analysis versus news, which is, I think, the epitome of, a dog whistle. I mean, are you kidding? How are people supposed to know this? But anyway.
Well, people who only had newspapers and grew up with newspapers, I think probably broadly did kind of understand those conventions. Think something's in a different typeface, has a certain kind of box around it, and it's an advertisement or a sponsored editorial, things like that. And then on the internet, it's all undifferentiated and it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Anyway, we got off on a little bit of a tangent about how confusing the structure of news organizations are, but I do want to come back to what's happening in the New York Times. Is this the stress of lockdown, or is there something more fundamental going on, that the voice of a lot of what drove that change came internally. Internally, people at New York Times, chatting with each other on Slack, and then of course spilling over into public on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in the New York Times. I've been there a couple of months and I've reported on it a bit, but I've kicked myself out of most of these Slacks because it just seemed like if I'm going to report on it, I probably shouldn't be lurking in the Slack. I think every institution in America is sort of going through a lot of the same stuff right now between coronavirus and all the sort of inequalities it exposed, and stresses it put on the workplace and new things it opened about work. And then these sort of wave of civil rights protests. And so I think in sort of consciousness of racism inside everybody's institutions, I don't think the Times is different in that way. I think every institution in America is dealing with this. The other thing they're dealing with is employees who feel much more, in some ways, more ownership of the company in a positive sense, and then more of a stake, and want to be listened to by their bosses in news, and particularly at the Times where they've encouraged and benefited from reporters having big voices on social media. Those reporters have a lot of leverage and feel comfortable speaking out. And I think, the Times has benefited massively from having these big voices all over the place. But that is a double-edged sword. It's great when they're hyping their work and promoting your brand, but then that can also criticize you, and it's pretty hard you can't really take one without the other.
Right. And you wrote recently about the Washington Post, where, of course, the legendary editor Marty Baron has a different view. He's, been quoted recently. I can't remember if it was an internal message or external, but it's all external now, that the individual is not the voice. The voice is the institutional voice of the Washington Post. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think the culture is shifting. The culture of newsrooms is shifting, and that's a hard line to hold.
Yeah. Part of what feels shifting along with this, and I'm again referring to your Washington Post story, is the question, and this may have to do with sort of greater awareness about race or equity or Trump. I'm not sure, but the changing norms and changing definition of objectivity. It feels to me like this is a bit of it's long been, this is not a new concept, but it feels more pointed now. And some of the long-standing traditions of the way that reporters are supposed to behave, you don't express your opinion, you don't go to a march, that you are absolutely sort of almost, straight and almost robot-like in your external manifestation, so as not to call into question the objectivity of the newspaper. That feels very much changing. How would you define objectivity now?
So I think
about a false god.
I guess I kind of think that, journalists, people, this is an argument that's been going on ever since Walter Lippmann, I believe, coined the term, 80 years ago or something. And it's always been something of an argument between where you're attacking each other's straw men. I think I think most reporters think that you should try to get the facts right and be fair to everyone. And I think that, this has played out a little bit as a debate between Wesley Lowery, a former Post reporter, and Marty Baron, who sort of stands for, the kind of old way. But, Marty Baron's old way involved taking down the Catholic Church. And nobody read those stories and thought, well, on one hand, the priests have a point, right? And meanwhile, Wesley's reporting involved breaking huge stories about police violence and putting together a huge data set around police shootings and calling the cops and asking them their perspective and trying to get the story right. And I think if you look at his work, I think it's actually a little hard to see what you're arguing.
What is the conflict?
I think the space that people are arguing about is much narrower than the kind of sloganeering on Twitter suggests. And I tend to think that there are differences. The big one is social media. If it was, I don't know if it ever made sense to have content churned out by kind of faceless drones inside a giant institution, but the world has changed. And now you can tell if that reporter is Black or white or Jewish. And, the New York Times had a tradition of, if reporters' names were too Jewish, they would have them use the initial. So there's great bylines like A.M. Rosenthal, A.H. Raskin, that's for Abraham. That's a deep tradition in newspapers, right, of kind of erasing people's ethnic identity.
Surnames give it away in most cases anyway.
Yeah, I know. Yes, for sure. But it's that's a pretty, there's a lot of history there. But I do think that there are two things happening. One is there really is an argument about, if you know too much about this reporter, are you going to trust them less? And I think, some of this is tactical. That's not really a moral or ethical or theoretical question. It's a do you? I don't know. Figure it out. That's a reportable question. And I think it depends a lot on the situation. And then there's just the fact that the values are changing with the generation. The New York Times of the 1970s was against racism. the Wall Street, like there aren't newspapers that think that segregation is an issue that should be covered like it has two reasonable sides, or apartheid, although there were. And I think, generationally values shift. I mean, the easy and obvious case is drugs. Like one of the things that the Post is, one of these sources of internal conflict. And to me, this was kind of a little bit of offered kind of an alternate view of some of the things that are happening in journalism, was that Marty got really upset about a piece about people going to Cats while high and enjoying the movie Cats while they were high. I mean, that's an argument about whether you like consuming marijuana. That's not an argument about journalism. And that is a big cultural shift over a generation where now people like to get high and watch Cats. It's not an argument about journalism at all. And I think changing views on race, on sex, on gender, on these are cultural shifts where the kind of, newsrooms all have these implicit assumptions of what is a story that we cover like it has two sides, what is something that is just morally obvious. And I think it's not that they never had those assumptions. I think it's that there's a fight happening right now over what those assumptions ought to be.
Right.
And I don't think that's the same thing as a fight over the rules of reporting, although there's some of that too.
So much of it, though, I think is in the eye of beholder. It probably shouldn't be, but it is. And I'm thinking about a piece that you wrote a little while ago, talk about taking down sacred cows, about Ronan Farrow. The title was, "Is Ronan Farrow Too Good to Be True?" Ronan Farrow in many circles is considered the golden child because he went after and helped, along with the New York Times, very aggressive reporting that ended up, taking down Harvey Weinstein and ignited in many ways, again, along with the New York Times reporting, the Me Too movement. People didn't call him into question because the cause was perceived to be good. But your piece, you did your own reporting and you found some holes in his story. Did you ever, and not only that, but your story was used as cover in at least one instance, or seemed to be used as cover for someone to say, you see, I'm vindicated, and that was Matt Lauer, who in the wake of your piece came out and said, you see, all of these things are not necessarily true, you have to believe me. How did that feel to you to be sort of the cover for, would-be or alleged assaulters to say that they're to defend themselves?
You just don't do articles. You don't, at least I don't, and I think most reporters don't try to gauge the truth of their pieces based on how people are going to react to them or trim their sails because they're afraid somebody who in this case was accused of rape is going to write a piece saying, actually, he didn't do anything wrong. That's not under my control. And it also, but on the other hand, the core of the piece was that, Ronan, in writing about Matt Lauer, had just failed to check some really basic boxes. He had a scene where one of the where the alleged victim, who, by the way, it's important to say, I don't think there's no indication that she has changed her story. This is an issue about the reporting, not about her story. But she, she had said that she ran and she talked to, or Farrow reports that she ran and she talked to somebody after one incident, and he just didn't call the person she supposedly talked to. And there's just no reason to not do that. And it, of course, opens the door wide to doubts about your reporting and doubts about the victim's story. And that's not, that's a reality. That's not because I wrote about it.
Right. But it could be perceived, that was perceived by some to be undermining sort of the Me Too cause.
Yeah, I guess I do think that there's a really powerful section in Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey's book about how the Me Too cause was powered by fundamentally forcing people to look at and accept these just incontrovertible facts. And I do think these social movements have been built on a base of really hard factual reporting of videos of cops shooting black guys in the back that you cannot argue with and kneeling on someone's neck. And I think that's a real lesson for the reporters covering them, that it's so important that you nail the facts. And I think the great journalism of this moment has been rooted, actually Wesley's police shooting database is a really good example, in in really rigorous, forcing to the surface of facts that people had previously considered like arguments or questions. Like, I don't know, does this stuff really happen? And I think it's risky to try to build on a base that has holes in it.
I want to turn now sort of to journalism and the crisis in the availability of journalism more broadly. I think everybody probably knows that there's just this incredible perfect storm of assaults on the availability of journalism. Local news is, dying and in many places dead. The business model, the advertising business model has completely collapsed. Most of that is being sucked up by the platforms, the Googles, the Facebooks of the world. You have the President of the United States calling the media the enemy of the people. You have the largest platform, Facebook, refusing, or maybe refusing. Maybe things are changing now to call those posts into question. It's pretty bad out there right now. The foundation of agreed upon evidence-based information seems to be completely collapsing. You've written quite a bit about Facebook. You did a very good column about his coziness with Trump. What do you think is going to happen with Facebook? And then I'd love to get more of your view on where journalism goes from here.
I mean, I think the thing is, like, Facebook's just a company. It's subject to pressure from politicians and advertisers, and I think people tend to treat it, and its executives sometimes treat it like it's a philosophical movement that operates based on principle.
But it's massive.
Yeah. Oh, it's a very powerful company, but it is subject to national regulation, and it's particularly an advertising company. And I think the thing that happened in the last couple of weeks is that its real customers are advertisers, not you and me.
Sure.
And so you and I can complain about this thing or that thing, but we're the product, we're not the customer. And when nobody's listening to like the cows when they complain about the quality of the hamburger, but when like the people at McDonald's complain, then it's an issue. And the people at McDonald's are, in this case, Verizon. We are the cows. The people.
We are the cows. Oh, great.
Are media buyers, and in even a fairly modest way, a handful of them pulled advertising from Facebook, and Facebook just immediately responded because those are its customers. That's its actual business.
You think they'll change?
They already have. I mean, I think that they're facing real regulatory initiatives in Australia and Europe that are going to force them to, increasingly operate with more control on the platform. That said, they're not a traditional publisher. Social media is not a thing that has an easy analogy under the old rules. And I think we're all going to have to sort of get to some place that is broadly acceptable to society and to regulators. Like, I don't think it's going to be something where ultimately, like, can Facebook executives just get to decide.
So I want to just for the, and then this is probably our last question, and then we'll close it up. We're coming up, what are we now, 4+ months till Election Day. There's been a lot of hand-wringing over the last 4 years from news organizations saying in certain ways that they were played, or they failed to see trends, or they, in some cases, and when there were hack and leaks, maybe not being as rigorous as they could about revealing that this is information that, in the case of the DNC leaks, that the Internet Research Agency in Russia wanted you to see. Do you think news organizations, and I realize it's ridiculous to paint them with a broad brush, have learned anything? And as we move towards November, do you see any change in approaches to reporting?
So every election, news organizations learn the lessons of that election, and 2016 was, historically wild and had much more intense lessons. And so, I think if the lessons were about how do you use hacked material, how do you deal with a candidate and president who just lies, how do you sort of try to, in some way, navigate this kind of attention economy? I think like the lessons of the last war actually are pretty well learned, and like the Maginot Line has been constructed around some of that stuff. I think there's a question, I think the question is how, and so I do think that Trump won't get kind of free airtime on the cable networks the way he did. I think, the coverage of him is going to be, is going to ultimately be of his presidency. The campaign doesn't matter. It's coverage of his actual actions as president. And, the coronavirus catastrophe is this central. It's going to be very hard for him to talk about, that's what the coverage will be. And I don't think his efforts to change the subject, I don't even know if it's the media's learned or just like they've gotten kind of boring. And so the media's audience has gotten bored. But I think people are, we were all kind of, I think, surprised. Maybe at BuzzFeed, we were a little less surprised just because we got a taste of it early, just at the way he lies. And I think it took various organizations a while just to, because it is appropriately a very high bar to call somebody a liar. You're kind of getting inside their head. And I think it took appropriately maybe media organizations like a while to come around to that. I do think there's a little more care about sort of like, are we just going to pick up Trump's attack by Biden and repeat them because they're entertaining? On the other hand, the story may wind up being that the media was intimidated out of giving a full accounting of some element of Biden's candidacy that we'll learn about after he was elected and wish we'd known about. Like, I think that, the media kind of tends to fight the last war. It does absolutely respond to pressure and partisans kind of working the refs. And so, is there some sense in which Biden is getting a pass that Hillary didn't because the media felt that it was disproportionately covering Clinton next to Trump? Maybe. I don't know. I think it's hard to say in the moment.
Well, I assume that may be the subject of some of your reporting over the next 4 months or so. I certainly hope so. Ben, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your really provocative, insightful, well-reported columns. Like I said, I am that person on Sunday night that's like, is it there? Is it live? Is it live? Is it live? So, and I know I'm not alone in that.
I'm gonna add you to my email list. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm on your email list, but it hits before the email. So, and I have to be first, we're all very competitive. Anyway, thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate you being with us and sharing your insight. All right, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us here tonight. I'm Terri Broussard Williams.
And I'm Lemuel Williams.
We are here at such a very special moment in time. The skills and the conversations that we have at the Aspen Socrates Program are so important. The intersection of intellectual curiosity and where it meets civil discourse is what the world needs more now than ever.
Terri and I would like to thank Aspen Socrates donors, sponsors, and those that are joining us online, locally, and globally.
We are here because what you provide through scholarships, donations, and support fuels this program. Next year, we'll be able to provide more scholarships because of the money that you will donate tonight. So thank you to providing money for all of us who are here, those we have not met yet, and those that we will meet in Aspen next year. This toast is for all of you. And we can't wait to see you in Aspen in July of 2021. Hear, hear.
Cheers to you.
Well, it has been quite an evening. We are most grateful to each and every one of you for joining us this evening to support Socrates Scholarships.
And big congrats and thanks to Claire, Ben, and Vivian for sensational dialogue, and to Cordell Carter and his team of Carly, Summer, and Gabriella. You all rock.
And we're super excited that next year will be the silver anniversary of the Socrates Program. That's 25 years. We hope it will be in person next year in Aspen.
Meanwhile, there are constant fabulous online seminars all year round these days, so get enlightened and enjoy Zooming with the best and brightest. We'll see you online and in Aspen in July 2021, COVID willing.
Thanks.